Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, October 28th, 2024 regular meeting of the Monroe Local Schools Board of Education. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter.
Present.
Mrs. Hagedorn. Present. Mr. Grant.
Present.
Mr. Leeds.
Present.
Mr. Fulham.
Here. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant.
Aye.
Mr. Fulham.
Aye.
Mr. Leeds.
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn. Aye. Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Section 2, Board Liaison and Committee Updates. 2.1, Legislative.
I talked to Thomas Hall, and there's nothing going on right now because of the election. But he says after the election, it looks like things are going to be slow, depending on who gets elected, because Stevens is dragging his feet. Same old, same old. But the one thing that's going to happen after the election, between then the new year and after the new year, these counties in the state of Ohio that have not received their taxation percentages are going to get those. And what I'm hearing is some of these counties are going to Columbus, and they're going to raise more cane than our districts did or our counties did when we got our taxation, because they're mad. And they're a northern tier of counties they're ready to go. So we'll see.
Well, they could have just climbed on the bandwagon when we asked them to jump on, but
It didn't affect them then.
Well,
Yeah,
they didn't.
exactly.
They thought we would get it lowered for them, and they wouldn't have to fight. But
To be the bad guy.
that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So-
No one wants to get involved until it affects their own pocketbook.
Right,
So that's the
right.
reason.
So, but that's where we are. And after the first of the year, there will be another go around on the Speaker of the House. And so that's going to get down and dirty. So, did we get anything done? No. That's the problem.
Yep.
Bottom line. That's it.
thank you, Mr. Leeds. 2.2, Butler Tech.
I've not heard from Mr. Gallo. I didn't hear from him today.
That's all right. Moving on, 2.3, Facilities Subcommittee.
Yeah, Mr. Leeds and myself met with Mr. Buzzkirk, Mrs. Moore, and Mr. Catanzaro last week. And Mr. Buzzkirk is going to be giving us an update on the facilities and the budgeting for the potential upcoming projects. That's all we have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Grant. 2.4, Student Achievement.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to recognize the student of the quarters that we just recognized. We had a ceremony last week for them, but for preschool, we had Ania Kaylee, kindergarten, Mia Noach. First grade was Dylan McLaughlin. Second grade was Grant Garber. Third grade, Shraya Adhika, I messed that up. Shraya Adhikari. Fourth grade, Langston Kennemer. Fifth grade, Kyra Bond. Sixth grade, Easton Dolby. Seventh grade, Tyson Daniels. Eighth grade, Anthony Joseph. Ninth grade, Mia Pack. 10th grade, Brady Props. 11th grade, Jesse Wines. And 12th grade, Jackson Payton. So congratulations to those students. I'd also like to recognize the high school fall sports and choir and band seniors. Congratulations for having a great fall season, and thank you for your leadership and being someone for the younger students to look up to. I'd also like to mention here during this meeting that we'll be recognizing the Merit Scholarship Award recipients in just a few minutes, so I'd like to congratulate them as well. And that's all we have for today.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Moving on to Section 3, Communications. 3.1, Recognition.
We are going to, Mr. Prohaska is going to come up here. The Governor's Merit Scholarship recipients are here, and he's going to recognize them. But this is a program started by the governor. Last year was the first year they did that, and their idea is incentive to keep the top of the students here in Ohio to our colleges and universities. And it is a great program and for our families to take advantage of. So Mr. Prohaska is going to talk a little bit about it. And
yeah, I'll just add to it.
recognize
It's $5,000 a year for 4 years. This is I could do the basic math, a $20,000 scholarship. Give it up for these kids. That would entice me to stay in the state of Ohio, but I know they've got a lot of decisions to be made. Just real quick, God, I love these kids because not only are they excelling in the classroom, I don't have time to talk about each and every one of them, but they all do a lot of different things around this school in regards to being involved in a play or band or a sport. I mean, it's phenomenal in the work that they do. So I just want to make sure I got that out real quick. A side note here, out of this is the top 5% of the senior class. There's 11 of them. We don't have anyone below a 4.7 GPA.
Really?
That is insane.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Neither did I.
So
Wow.
parents, you guys have done a great job. These kids have worked very hard to get to this point. I also wanted to let you know, we're doing this now. Last time, the first time we did it back in January. This is the schedule that they wanted us to be on. This is the schedule that the state of Ohio actually wanted, because they wanted the kids to get through their junior year, take the top 5% at that point, get them recognized in the fall so that they could have time to make their decisions on where to go to school. And then all of you guys will be getting some type of mailer by the end of the week is what they told me, where you guys will get all the information about what to do next, the next steps. So that's for the parents. So look for that in the mail. They told me it would be mailed by November 1st, is what I was told. So now at this time, I want to recognize the students, and then we'll just hold the applause until they get all up here. We'll just come across. So first, this is a random order. This is not the order that they are in class rankings. So don't all like, what? Why did he say her first? Okay, here we go. So first is Brooklyn Baker. Okay, go ahead, class. Next up, Matthew Esau. Chloe Glay. Old man Timothy Hudson. He's worked so hard for his GPA that he's got gray hair now. Okay? Miss Natalie Long. Sam McCausland. Kaylee McIntosh. Isabella Muncie. Rachel Regal. Sophia Salee. And Brady Staples. The school board would like to congratulate you. I wish you guys the very best. It's awesome that you guys have this great opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys go ahead and read, and we'll do a big group photo. Oh, sorry.
Awesome job. All right. Kids go 2 rows. I just love for those people that have gray hair.
We'll get them close. There you go. I just need everybody to get yeah, we'll get one. come over here and it'll bounce out a little better.
Bounce out?
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
Oh, now you're really gonna make me look tall.
All right, you guys ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Hold it, hold it, hold it. Don't move, don't move.
Oh, okay.
All over.
There we go. Thank you.
Great job, everyone. Multiply by 9 by 2.
At this time, parents, you are free to go. I would get out at this time. I have a presentation that's going to last about 20 minutes, and I don't think anybody wants to be here for it, so.
Real quick, parents, we'll make sure that the pictures Mr. Markham took, that I'll have Mr. Prohaska send with a link so you guys can get all those pictures. And congratulations again.
What's crazy is about Muncie, I coached her older brother back in baseball, Marcellus. 4.7 is the lowest.
Just in case they're gonna.
I have to know, what's the highest?
Nobody wanted to stay.
Well, he told him to
Are you
run.
allowed to ask?
So what's the highest possible GPA?
Is it 5.0?
5.0.
No.
No?
You know about that?
What's the highest?
It's below that. Well,
The highest right now is a 4.844. No, wait, excuse me, 4.881.
what happens is they take CCP or honors or AP, they get add-ons, so it adds up. And then we approve the new one. That
Correct. That's why I was curious.
I don't know if somebody took all CC, I don't know. It's got to be
Interesting.
close to what that.
And not
is.
with that, because every one of those
Really-
kids does multiple things, like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I knew every one of them
I
from
knew.
multiple
Yep.
music and sports and activities.
That's
It's
impressive.
fascinating.
Great, great kids.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
4.7 is the lowest?
Yeah.
Way above mine.
And next year we'll have more because the next two classes are the two biggest in the district, so,
So it's the top 5%, no
Yep.
matter how many.
yep.
That's awesome.
Big schools.
That's so awesome. It's so awesome. Okay.
All right. Let's see. Item 3.2, comments from the public. Seeing none, we'll move on to 3.3, the state report card presentation. Mrs. Long.
All right. We're going to have Mrs. Long share a little more details about it, and then actually each building principal is going to talk a little bit more specifically about some things in each of their buildings.
Yeah, we're going to keep it like we did it last year. So as I was preparing for this, I was thinking to myself, this is probably the hardest presentation to do because there's so much that I'd like to cover and talk about, but it just gets so complicated as you start digging down into it. So just keep that in mind that I'm doing a high-level overview of the district report card, and then the principals, they'll hit some areas that are highlights for their building, okay? So before I start on this slide, I do just want to say that I want to take a minute to recognize all of the staff, administrators, parents, students who worked hard to get to our 4.5 stars, which is where we ended up this year. This 4.5 stars shows that it gives us a comprehensive view of our district and school effectiveness, and it signifies that we are exceeding state standards, okay? Keep in mind, this is just one of the measures that we use to determine how we are doing as a school and as schools and as a district, okay? Next slide. This probably looks familiar to you. I had this up last year. This is the second year that we're using this rating system. You see the different components, and then it tells you how many measures make up each component. The gap closing component is the largest with six measures. The star ratings are assigned to 5 of the 6 components. The college, career, workforce, and military readiness component is supposed to be rated next year. We are getting data on that. We got some last year, we're getting some this year, but it's not reported yet. And it's not 100% that it will be reported next year, so we'll just have to wait and see on that one. There are numerous combinations of these as you start digging down into report cards, depending on what measures schools and districts have. A district report card, we have all of the components, so we get rated on all of those. For us, because there's different weights as well, depending on what components you get rated on. So we are rated, our highest weights are the achievement and the progress component. And then graduation, gap closing, and early literacy are the next. So achievement and progress has a weight of 28.6%, and graduation, gap closing, and early literacy has a weight of 14.3% each. Those are each. Yep. Page is stuck. So here's our report card, and you can see in the corner what our stars are, star ratings are, and then there's a quick little summary of what each of the components are. I'm not going to read through each of the components, but we did get a 4 in achievement, a 4 in progress, a 5 in gap closing, a 5 in graduation, a 3 in early literacy, and then of course the last one is not rated yet. You'll notice that our stars are the same as they were last year, which is not a bad thing because that means we're maintaining at least. But also, if you dig into some of those, they did go up. It's just that we're still in that range of scores that it puts us in, that specific star rating. Our achievement category is one that I want to highlight for Monroe. We have our performance index, which makes up that whole measure. Our performance index is trending upwards, so that's a good thing. The second area that I wanted to highlight also was our gap closing and the chronic absenteeism measure for that one, which may be the most important because if students aren't in school, how are we going to teach them? So we did reduce our measure by 2.3 points. The goal was 1.1 points, and we reduced it by 2.3, so that was good. So here are some things that we are, as a district and as buildings, are doing to help improve the achievement of our schools, of our students in Monroe. The first bulleted section there talks about best practices, K-12 for curriculum instruction and assessment. And some of the specific things that we're doing there is to continue strengthening our Tier 1 instruction. We worked on that last year. That was up on the board, up on the screen last year as well. But really, that's an ongoing thing that we have to keep focusing on to have that, to make continuous improvement. So, Tier 1 instruction, when you talk about that, that means 80%, if you have a strong Tier 1 instruction, 80% of your kids should be proficient in whatever content area you're talking about, okay? We have contracted with a couple of outside professionals. Earlier in the year, you approved the math contract with Michelle Walker Glenn, and then you also approved an English learner professional development with Butler County. So what we're doing is we're working with the teachers to give them strategies and things that they can use in the classroom for math, which seems to be one of our low performing areas in math, and then also to work with our English learner population. And what we're doing is the coaches, the instructional coaches K through 6, they attend especially the math. They're also in contact with the English learner professional development presenter, but they are in contact with them or attending the professional development so that they can provide immediate support to the teachers in the classroom, okay? The other thing another thing that we're doing is to develop our aligned district-wide MTSS. That's a multi-tiered system of support framework. We're in year 2 of that. The high school is working on the Each Child on Track, and Tom's going to talk a little bit about that in his part of the presentation tonight. The other thing we're doing is also focusing on a K-3 alignment because we need to get that early intervention in there. So we're working on that K-3 so that when they transition from the primary to the elementary, we're not losing any ground. We want to close those gaps in the early years. We don't want to wait because then they just get larger and larger. And then the last one is that we're analyzing district and building systems. I didn't have this on last year, but we've had a lot of discussion about this, and these are just three. There are others, but these are three that stand out. We've been talking a lot about master's schedules and academic programming, and what I mean by the master's schedules is how many minutes, instructional minutes, are we truly spending on ELA? Are we spending on math? Is it equitable? Are all of our students receiving that instruction? Those are all really important things. And then also academic program, are we providing the right courses? Like for example, one thing we're doing is we're working on the gifted alignment between grades 6, 7, and 8. We're spreading those standards out. So that's something that we're working on, and that would be an example of that we're doing as a system. EMIS reporting, we've discovered that it seems like more and more reporting that we have to do. So we're trying to make sure that we're getting more than one set of eyes on the EMIS data, because that could really impact us. Just the smallest little thing could impact our report card. So we're making sure that we're reporting and we're checking and double checking those things. And then analyzing various sets of data. And what I mean by that is we're looking at academic data, we're looking at social emotional data, we're looking at our human resources data to see, are we maximizing the human resources that we have here in the district. So those are just a few of the things. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Melissa Giffen for the primary report card. And while she's coming up, in your executive session part of the agenda, I put a spreadsheet that has Butler County district ratings, so you can see. And also, I did put a guide to the report cards, just in case you want to look at anything more in depth. And as always, ask any questions you have, just let me know.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the primary rating. We are in a precarious situation at the primary. I kind of talked about this a little bit last year. We have 2 indicators that we are rated on because we do not have any state scores that go into our ratings. So some are rated on 6. We're rated on 2 different areas. One is gap closing, which we have a 5, and then early literacy, which is a 1-star. That's just stabs you in the heart. So I'm going to talk about that and what we're doing to try to help with that score. I have talked to some different schools who are in the same situation, not having a K-6 building. Ours cuts off at 1st grade, so that's why we have only a few things that we're rated on. And those schools are right there with us. So I was at church talking about that the other day. So we do have the 2 indicators, gap closing and early literacy. If we want to go to the next slide, I do want to focus a little bit on our, if you'll go. We did score a 5 out of 5 on gap closing, and our current kindergarten students who did attend preschool came in on target. At 65% of them were ready to go in kindergarten. And if you recall last year, that was a big thing that I wanted to start working on, was trying to get them more kindergarten ready. The next slide are challenges. Well, I just stated that NPS is only rated on 2 indicators. Our testing windows are also very interesting. We have to test kindergartners who are new to school within the first 20 days of school. And if any of you want to come visit the primary the first 20 days of school, we could use the hands. So we do that testing, and they get a score. And then again in 1st grade, the first 20 days, and we have to show if they're on track and stay on track, or if they are off track and they're moving on track, or if they're below. One of our challenges, as I was looking, I looked at all the kindergarten scores coming in this year, and of those kindergartners who did not attend preschool, 72% of them were starting off track. So that's a lot of kids who are at a deficit, and how do we reach those students, outside of, opening up a preschool center, where we can reach more students? That is a problem. Because looking at the scores, it did show if they attend preschool, they are going to come in more kindergarten ready. For what we're doing to improve our literacy, I also talked last year about how we were going to try to create partnerships with local preschools, which we did that. We have partnered with Early Edge, the Global STEM Academy, Hilltop, and now also Little Hearts. We just made contact with them. They came into our schools, they observed our preschool teachers, they bought the materials, and then our teachers would go out and kind of help them get it set up and go observe them one time just to see if they're doing it correctly. So they are using the program called Haggerty and Read It Again programs. The Haggerty program is a phonemic awareness program that is really opening up the cognitive load of hearing the sounds and knowing what each sound makes, which is going to make them more ready to apply that to letters and get them reading quicker. So they are doing that. I hear from some of the teachers who have kids in the preschools locally that it is helping. We do have quite a number of students who are not in a local preschool. Maybe they go where their parents work or what have you. But of those who go to preschool, they are coming in ready. So that is a good thing. And just last week, Liberty Heights Little Hearts came in, and they're looking forward to starting that program as well. We're also continuing to analyze our data and adjusting our instruction accordingly. Last year, we spent our whole year on studying explicit instruction for language arts, and I do see just going in the classrooms, they are getting more consistent. And we are getting a new curriculum next year, so that should help also. We are working, as Jody just mentioned, on aligning our MTSS efforts to make sure that no kids are falling between the cracks. And also, we're continuing to strengthen our school parent partnerships, making sure parents know what their children are deficit in through the KRA scores, and also with those, we added last year, that was another thing we had said we were going to do, and we did, was a spring kindergarten readiness night, and I was really overwhelmed and excited with the amount of parents that showed up for that. Before we opened the door, the line was clear almost down to the playground, so it was exciting. So at that point in the spring, we did get materials into their hands of things they can do over the summer, not to ruin summer, but just to have some little extra learning. So I'm hoping that, maybe that helps as well. And then just so you have an idea, 69% of our kids did go to preschool and 31% did not attend preschool. So that kind of gives you a guide there. And then our last slide, our goals for MPS is to continue our preschool efforts to have more students try to come in more kindergarten ready with continuing the readiness nights. We do have the kindergarten screenings. By kindergarten screening, though, summer's over, so we really want to try to get it out earlier. That's why we added the readiness night. We want to keep our students from dropping off track from kindergarten to first grade. And to do that, we really, we're going to also maybe change the sequence of our testing. Maybe do math first, give them a little bit more time so they're ready for their language arts part of the test. And then also move more students to the on track throughout kindergarten. Do you have any questions? No. No?
Thank you.
Come visit us sometime.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Before I start, I just want you to know we have an administrator in the building in one of our buildings who likes to celebrate Bengals wins with jeans and Bengals gear, but we at Monroe Elementary are an inclusive environment, so we celebrate all teams. It's the Brownies, just so you know.
I disagree with that statement.
Even the Browns.
So the elementary school is 4.5 stars. You can see up there. We are 4 stars in achievement, progress, gap closing, and early literacy. I actually don't know how 4 areas of 4 stars equals 4.5 stars, but we'll take it. So the focus that we're going to talk about is gap closing and early literacy. So you can go ahead and go to back to the slideshow. The gap closing is something that we're proud of. Next one. No, keep going. One more. There we go. So gap closing measures how well students are meeting performance for all students. So it looks at all our different subgroups from special ed to EL students to different races. That's what we're looking at when we're talking about this. So when you go to the next slide, you'll see this is our language arts achievement. So the red dots are the targets that the state sets for us, and then the numbers on the right are our scores. So in every area we are beating the score. The one down there, This one right here, it's hard to tell if we're actually above it or not. The 55.8 is the red dot. Our score is 56.6, so we did beat it in every area. But our lowest, our biggest, or our smallest gap, I guess, we didn't get this high enough, is our special ed, our students with disabilities. That is going to be our focus going forward. If you click on the next slide, you can see our math scores also still way above the target in every area. Our students with disabilities scoring a little bit better in math, but still an area we really need to focus on. We've been talking a lot about the different models, not just with special ed, but with EL students, our English learner students. How are we giving them their services? We're doing a lot of pull-out instruction. In our special ed department, we have push-in and pull-out where we're in the classroom and they get pulled from their general education peers. We have programs that the special ed department has bought for them that are research-based programs for literacy. We want to continue to look at that and try to develop it. One of the things I continuously do is look at our master schedule. Jody mentioned that's something that we want to look at, all the minutes that we're giving, our tier 1 instruction that our special ed students are getting. But everything is on the table. I'm really looking at our intervention time, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but how are we scheduling the time where the kids are working on those skills that they're a little bit deficient in? How do I have that scheduled in the day? What resources do we have, giving the students the minutes and the time that they need? So we're really just trying to dive into that. We're going to start it early this year. I typically don't look at our master schedule until January or February. My goal is to actually start it in November, beginning in November, to give us a little bit more time to meet as a whole team, a district team, instead of me and my building just working on it. I want to get with the district team, work on it, and then spill that into our building as well. So that's the gap closing is something we're excited about. Go ahead, go to the next slide. Our early literacy is also 4 stars. Early literacy measures basically how you move kids from off track to on track. And off track means that they are at the 15th percentile or below on the fall benchmark assessment. So we use AIMS-Web, which is a norm referenced assessment that all the kids take. We do it 3 times a year, but the fall score is what tells us if they're on track or off track. So any student that is hitting 15th percentile nationally or below is labeled off track. And then as they go through, when they take the Ohio State test, and then when they take the fall or the winter and the spring benchmarks assessments on AIMS-Web, they can move to on track as they start raising their scores. So go ahead, next slide. This is kind of what we do. Sorry, that's really small. This is kind of what we're doing for our early literacy for Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions, or Tier 1 instruction and Tier 2 intervention. So our Tier 1 instruction is what all our students get. That's just the regular classroom instruction. Every student gets that. Tier 2 interventions are for students who are getting maybe a little bit behind, not necessarily 15th percentile and below, but anything below benchmark, which is the 30th percentile. So anything below 30, we usually give interventions to kids. So we might give them sight word work, doing flashcards. We might give them some more phonics instruction. Even some of the phonemes, like the primary level type reading instruction, we might give them that as well. But one of the things we've done as a building, as a district, is all our teachers, especially in, I think, K through 3, are Orton Gillingham trained. All the ones that were here last year are trained in it, and then our new teachers will also be trained in it. Orton Gillingham is a research-based intervention that is specifically designed, it's connected to the science of reading, designed to help them with their phonics and help improve fluency and literacy. And all our teachers are trained in that. Our second grade teachers do whole group, Orton Gillingham, and small group. Our third grade teachers do small group with the students who still need it. We have data meetings with instructional coaches. So we actually using the contract to our advantage, the master contract to our advantage, or the union contract, whatever it's called. All teachers are required to, or we have the ability to have staff meetings after school. I actually take one of those staff meetings away, and they meet with their instructional coaches instead. So instead of having that after school meeting, they actually meet during their plan time with an instructional coach, and they go over all their AIMS-Web data. They make an intervention plan with them, and our instructional coaches are phenomenal. They work really well with teachers and really since we have started that, I think 3 years ago, our teachers' knowledge of interventions, it just goes up every year. So a lot of the coaches are coming into the meetings, and the teachers already have a plan that they've started because of the work they've done the last 2 years. So it's been a tremendous, 3 years ago, or I guess 4 years ago, when you approved us hiring those coaches, it's been a tremendous asset to our building. We also have 30-minute scheduled intervention time. I mentioned that a little bit ago. This has been in place for quite a long time, I think, in the elementary school before I got here. Every homeroom has 30 minutes designated to intervention or enrichment time. And so we use that time really well. This year, we actually tried to put 2 intervention times in place into second and third grade because they struggled to find time to do reading interventions and math interventions, and they also struggled sometimes when a student is pulled out, like a homeroom teacher, my student gets pulled out because they're special ed and they need to get their special ed instruction. Well, then I never have time to do my classroom interventions with them. So giving the 2 intervention times was the goal. I will be honest that we're struggling with it a little bit. A lot of teachers using it really well, but they feel like they're losing a little bit too much instruction time. So we're going to go back and kind of reevaluate that when we go over the master schedule to figure out if it's something we want to continue doing or not. But it is a huge benefit to our master schedule, or to our students, to be able to put that 30 minutes into our master schedule. Go ahead and go to the last slide. So the information on the website, or on the report card, I don't think is very good for this measure. So I took this and created this from AimsWeb. So on the left side, those are our current second grade students. On the right side, our current third grade students. So this line here is the number of students who are off track for all the different administrations of AimsWeb. That's the number of students who are at the 15th percentile or below. So this would have been when our current second grade students were in first grade, started off with 109 students off track. By the end of second grade last year, there was only 31 students off track. Same thing when I'm looking at third grade. When they came into second grade, there were 43 off track, and by the end of third grade last year, there were only 19. So we were below 10% of our students who were off track. Our goal in that, my goal in that at least, is 5%. So my goal is still to cut that down even more than we already are. And you can see from the graph that we do have a steady decline of the number of students who are off track. So it's just a good thing. It's a good visual to see that we are making progress and making growth, even though sometimes we get frustrated towards the end of third grade when I have all these students who still haven't passed the Ohio State test, and I got to give other assessments, and we try to put even more intense interventions in the spring. It's still good to know that we're really, as much as we work on, as much as we stress about it, it's less than 10% of our students that are not meeting that target. So, and all special ed students are included in that number. So even students who have learning disabilities, that 19 is including those students too. So that's all I got. Any questions?
Students that are off track, is a lot of that attendance?
Some of it, yeah. I wouldn't say it's a huge number, but I'd say there's a handful of them every year that their progress is definitely hampered by their attendance. You know, we put attendance plans in place and we work with the parents, but sometimes it's just, you feel like you're beating your head against the wall trying to get them to school. So, but I don't think that's a huge number. It's probably less than 5.
I know Tim just mentioned something to me while you were talking, and the number in fall of 2022, that number could also be reflected, I'm assuming, due to COVID, not being in the building, they're being off track.
Yeah.
Obviously, as the numbers progress, it speaks volumes to me that, more importantly, if your kids are in the building, they're going to get educated.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Yeah, we've definitely, the effects of COVID, I think, they're still there, but they're wearing off.
Yeah.
And I think we're just going to continue to see progress every year.
Well, I mean, look, in second grade of fall of 22, you're at 109. Those same kids were tested in the fall of 23, and there was only 29 that were off track. Right? So, I mean, it shows a very clear improvement plan.
Right.
That's great.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. I should have worn my Broncos tie. I also have a bow tie as well, but decided to keep it
That's the FC Cincinnati tie.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
what I'm going with.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Broncos 5-3, but, you know.
Wear the bow tie next time.
Next time I will, Dave, thanks. All right, anyway, thank you all for giving us the opportunity to present on this tonight. I think it's great to hear just awesome things that each building is doing, and just to celebrate the great things that we have going on in the whole district. And I think something that Mr. Buskirk, Jody, Nancy, Stratton, we all talk about, it's not just, hey, these are my kids for 7th and 8th grade, it's a K-12 mission. And it's really cool to see how the data really, you know, falls everywhere in each building. And, you know, like Tom, he's gonna talk about the high school graduation rate, like every building plays a part in that. So it's great to see the individual buildings, but it's also cool to see the connections too. So, all right, next slide, please. Okay, so we ended up with a 4 out of 5, and again, that's a great rating for us. That's what we were at last year. I will say that the staff is always wanting to improve on that. We want that 5th star. We want the half star. To Joe's credit, I don't understand the math on that either, how we got that half point, but either way, kudos to elementary school. So anyway, we're looking for ways to improve each and every single day, each and every single year. I think we've got some great things going currently this school year that we're gonna really boost that up too. But 4 out of 5 is great, just never satisfied with that. All right, next slide. So we are rated on 3 components, okay? So we have achievement, which is really just kind of like our test scores, how the kids perform on the assessments. We have progress, okay, which really is where the state is expecting our kids to perform on these state tests, and then how we meet that, okay? And then the gap closing, I thought Joe did a really good job speaking on gap closing. We're in that same position there, okay? So we got 4 out of 5 for gap closing, 3 out of 5 for progress, and then 4 out of 5 for achievement. So those are the 3 pillars that we're rated on for the report card at the junior high level. All right, next slide. Okay, so I started up with areas that we want to see improvement in this year. So again, a lot of things that we're pleased about, but really want to talk about the progress component. So we got a 3 out of 5, okay, but we see areas for improvement for sure. So in the red, we see that we need to show some improvement here. And I will actually show you on a later slide that our 7th grade scores last year, which is our current 8th graders, like in a proficiency standpoint on the report card, they all passed the test, like a lot of them passed the test. It was great. We actually had like 85% of kids pass the language arts test in 7th grade. However, this is the progress component. So the state sets a formula based on how these kids have performed over the last few years, and then it's projecting them, hey, yeah, they did great, they passed, but the formula says they need to be at this level. Okay, so that's kind of how it's like the equal playing field for each school. So that's kind of what progress means here, okay? As you can see at the 8th grade level, this dark gray is exceptional. Okay, that's the highest level we could get. The proficiency for 8th grade language arts wasn't super high, but the growth and the progress that the state was expecting and how they actually performed was excellent. And the same thing goes with math and science for 8th grade. So that's the difference between the components of the report card. So we're celebrating that growth that those kids made in 8th grade last year. And another challenge that we have is Algebra 1. Okay, so that's our 8th grade students that are taking an Algebra 1 high school credit class. And Jody did a really good job speaking on what we're doing to vertically align that. Like some of our 6th grade teachers taking on some honors math standards. The 7th grade math team understand they're teaching these standards, and they're also going to work on some of that math 8, because these kids are going directly from math 7 to taking Algebra 1. And that's a big jump for them. So we do a lot of assessments and screeners to make sure that those kids are prepared for that. We feel really good about our honors rubric placement system, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the state is still expecting them to show the same growth on the Algebra 1 assessment compared to how they did on Math 7. So they're elevating, we're accelerating them a whole curriculum piece, but they're expecting that same growth. So that's a challenge for us. We fully embrace that. We know what work needs to be done there, but that's something that we want to be aware of and we're cognizant of for sure. Next slide. Okay, so another area that we're concerned about, but we have plans in place, and again, the district has been there to support us each step of the way, is our performance in terms of students in special education and also our English language learners. Okay, we know that our English language learner population is is growing pretty much by the day. Feels like we get a new enrollee every month or a couple. So we are struggling right now to see that progress in terms of that subgroup, okay? But in a couple of slides, I have some plans in terms of how we're going to work on that. But you can see it's pretty consistent between language arts and in math. But again, the red dots, like Mr. Ward said, are kind of those state expectation red dots, and we're doing well in many of the other categories. However, we are needing to see some improvement here for our special education students and our English language learners. All right, next slide. Okay, so, hey, there wasn't a typo. That was good. Jody, I was worried about that. Okay, great. So here is a highlight. So when I took, this is my 5th year as principal, when I was provided the position back in the spring of 2020, we were pretty much on the watch list for gifted, okay? So basically meaning that the state could have been involved if we didn't show progress in this area. So at that report card, we were 1 out of 5 stars, okay? So at the most recent report card, we're a 3 out of 5 for our gifted component, which is great. The district has supported us in so many ways with that. Our gifted intervention specialists, as Jody mentioned, are now servicing kids grades 6 through 8. Originally, they were just servicing 4 through 6. So we've kind of flexed that up. We've seen a great increase from that as well. So we're super pleased about that. We've also, Nancy Stratton has done a great job enrolling our math and language arts teachers in gifted training throughout the year as well. So they get that professional development, which we feel like is helping us with that. Or is it saying I need assistance? Okay.
She's working on it.
All right, terrific. So you can see here, this is our gifted performance index rating, and we were 0.2 away from meeting this goal here, and we would have had check marks across the board. So that's essentially like one student scoring advanced or scoring accomplished on a test. I mean, we're talking like narrow margins, and that rating could have been even 4 or maybe even 5 out of 5. Okay, so we have a lot to celebrate with our gifted growth, and again, credit goes to our staff, our students, for making that happen. But that's a big celebration for us because that was an issue we were having for the longest time. So 0.2. It's all right. Yeah. We got a goal in mind for sure. All right, next slide. Okay, so just wanted to share this arrow in terms of just like an upwards climb. This is just our general how students are performing on tests, our performance index, okay? So I don't know exactly what that number says. I think it's like 76.3. That was in the 2021 report card, and you can see that we've steadily climbed, remained the same here, showed improvement again from 23 to 24. So our staff is really proud about that in terms that we've shown continuous improvement over the last 3 to 4 years in that area. And I also mentioned like the percent proficient piece. That language arts score there for our 7th graders last year, 84.6% of our kids passed the language arts test. That's great. So we're celebrating that for sure. It's the highest score I remember seeing in that area at that subject for a very long time for the building. However, the progress component is something that we're working on with those students. So that's a good snapshot in terms of where we're at. All right, next slide. Okay, so gap closing, we were 4 out of 5 stars. A couple of things I wanted to highlight too. This testing participation rate, that is a huge factor in terms of you get additional points for that. We want every student to be assessed just to measure where they're at and how we can help service them, right? But to Mr. Leeds' point, we got to make sure that they're here. That takes a lot of work to make sure that the testing schedule is clean. Mr. Buskirk's done a great job of arranging transportation. We have the 2-hour delay schedule. All those things are helping, making sure that kids are being assessed. So with that being said, 99.8% of our students were assessed. I knew exactly who the 0.2%, who that student was, but we weren't able to physically get them into the building to be assessed. So anyway, we're happy about that. Another celebration that we have is our chronic absenteeism for the junior high. I know those of you that had middle school students, sometimes they're not super motivated to be at school all the time. I feel like our environment is great for the building, but things happen. However, we got a 5 out of 5 points for our chronic absenteeism. So I think that has to do with our attendance officer, with Mrs. Duddleson, and the district working together to support that. So we actually met that component as well, which factors into our gap closing rating. So that's been great in terms of making sure kids are being in the building. All right, next slide. Okay, so next steps. Progress component, 3 out of 5. We have a time period, it's called Hive, which is essentially a study hall period for a lot of students in previous school years. This year, we've used the data. We've become very targeted in terms of what students are receiving intervention and supports during that time. Hive only exists because we share the cafeteria with the high school. And we had that 30-minute block. We're like, okay, what are we going to do with these kids? We can't send them all down to the cafeteria. What are we going to do? So it's in the middle of our day. We've been very targeted in terms of the data that we have in the classroom on previous assessments, on our iReady diagnostics. We're looking at all that data. We have our 4 math teachers no longer have hives, but instead they are pulling select targeted groups to show improvement in math. We're looking at the data. That's something we need to show growth in across the board. So we're using that time wisely, and also want to just point out that those groups aren't static either. Usually it's like halfway through the quarter, at midterm, end of quarter, based on how kids are performing on the most recent classroom assessments, we're rotating those kids through those interventions. So it's not like you're in that same intervention group through the entire year. We're looking at the numbers, and we're implementing that. So Jody mentioned this vertically aligned piece. That's been great, spreading out some of those standards for our honors math students. So that way it's not just being crammed into, hey, 7th grade, now you're going to do Algebra 1, go figure it out. We're spanning that across 3 grade levels. So that's been a big plus for us. We're also providing gifted intervention during math, or for math during Hive as well. So one of our gifted intervention specialists is doing that. So we've got a lot of things going on from 10:58 to 11:28 every day. Again, we've created some honors rubrics through the work with Michelle Walker-Glenn, networking with other districts. Our placement system looks at 2 years worth of data for language arts and math. So it's not just how they performed on the spring state test. We look at 2 years worth of data and screenings to make sure that kids are appropriately placed in those classes. We feel really good about that. This is the first year that we really implemented a rubric system for placement of students there. Gifted support in ELA 7, we have co-taught honors classes in terms of being supported with a gifted intervention specialist in there as well. So we have 2 adults working to support kids to make sure growth is being made there. And then we're doing rewards for reading intervention for our students with learning disabilities. And we've done a lot of professional development and coaching in the ELL world too. And it's not just the test of subject area teachers, it's all staff. Because if you can read in social studies, that's going to assist you in language arts, science, art. Honestly, if you're in a learning setting, we need to learn how to service these students and make sure that they are growing at the rate that we need them to. So that training has not just been for tested subject area teachers, that has been professional development for all staff. So yeah, that's it for the junior high. So I think, right, Mr. Westphal? Yes, okay. All right, any questions for me on the junior high?
Good stuff.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good evening. So I want to give a shout out to Logan in the junior high because I have the freshman class right now. If you would have seen what he did, what he showed you, what I'm seeing from that group, yeah, that's pretty impressive. It really is. I mean, hey, every group has some challenges, right? But it's definitely showing in what he's doing, and I could see it with the kids that are coming up, and it's definitely making a difference. You can see our overall score. Let's talk about something I'm very proud of. You guys notice our graduation rate, okay? It's been something that I kind of take on personally. Everyone below the high school has done a fantastic job getting these kids ready, and then they start acting like adults, and they start acting like the lights at the end of the tunnel, but then they don't want to. You got to keep pushing them to get to that end. It's something else. So we're very proud of it. And we're already working with these kids, making sure that anyone that's on maybe our Red Star list, that we've got them ready, and we're really plugging away. One thing I want to share with you is this number keeps going up every year. We have about between 15 to 20 early graduates that we will be celebrating in January. So that number continues. So we have a lot of kids that are jumping and getting to that graduation a semester before most of the kids do. One thing I want to work on definitely is our gap closing, and I made a couple notes here. One thing that's just a thorn in my side, and in other buildings it's not. We got to get better with our chronic absenteeism. It's definitely something we have to improve. English learners, our EL learners, our OELPA scores are not where they need to be. To move that, that's why we're at 3 instead of 4 like we were last year. We got to continue making math growth, and then we got to put a plan in place if we want to. I know he's worked very hard on gifted. We have not worked on that piece as much, and that's where we're getting dinged on the gap closing, and that's why we're at where we're at. But I'm gonna share some other items that are really working well for the high school. But those are areas. If we want to talk about something that's a highlight, definitely graduation. I'm going to talk about achievement here in a second. Gap closing is a concern of mine, and I think we're going to do some things here in the next year that will help with that. Next slide, please. So real quick, we talked about each child on track. The big thing is I'm going to keep it simple, stupid. Right here, we're working on this, ABC. We're working on attendance interventions, and I'm going to show you some data from this first quarter, and we've made a huge dent when it comes to attendance. Behavior interventions. I have some data to show you on behavior, just so you got an idea of where we're at in that regards, and that could affect the attendance piece. And then we've got the course academic interventions, and I'll talk about what we're doing with our ECOT grade level groups. Next slide, please. One thing I want you guys to understand is on the next slide, we have chronic absenteeism. So you can see up here, this is where we're at. 23.4. Before you get really nervous about that number, I looked at a couple area schools. Ours is very similar to a school south of ours. To the north, we're in really good shape. Okay, so I just want to put that in play. We're really in Butler County, we're sitting in the middle. This isn't like something that's like, oh boy, you better get rid of the principal and get someone new in here. I don't think we're at that point. But do we have to improve in that area? Absolutely. But here's what I want you to take a look at. So what is chronic absenteeism? Is when you have excused absences, unexcused absences, and you have also any type of suspensions as well. That's your chronic piece. So think about that. It's the excused and unexcused piece. When I show you some data of where we're at with attendance this first quarter, we've made head and tails, compared to last year. But, and I'm hoping that we could look at this number next year and that our goal is to get it down to 20. And that would be, for next year, that'd be a nice little drop if we could get there. But I think it's important for you guys to see where does the state of Ohio come up with that chronic absence number. So next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to, set the next one. Yep, wanted to show you guys a little bit of behavior. So here's where I'm in a little bit of a bind. For the last week, 2 weeks, I've been by myself. John's been out. I've had to deal with some discipline issues. And there's a couple of them that I felt like it was very important that we do out-of-school suspension. Well, guess what? That plays into chronic absenteeism. But I also feel like it's not good enough to just put them in in-school suspension. More often than not, we do that. We love to keep the kids at school if we can. And I'd rather have a kid in the building working on something than actually out of the building, just probably sleeping in and watching TV. But I just wanted you to see where we're at with our number for this quarter. 22 students had some kind of in-school or out-of-school. Of course, the last one's expulsion. So we got that. 10 in the freshmen, 6 in the sophomores, and 6 between the junior and senior class. We know that we've got to work hard with our freshmen and with our sophomore class. So that's that. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. I guarantee there are a lot of schools in Southwest Ohio who would love to see this number for a quarter. This is really good. Next one. Okay, course performance. I kind of dug into this last night. I just wanted to kind of take a look at it. So our average, I took the average of all our scores and we were at a 74.3. You can see that geometry, there's a severe drop-off, and the kids are aware that it doesn't actually count towards graduation. So I'm trying to figure out how could we incentivize this, because they're not very motivated. They're not taking that test and really worried about it, is what I'm trying to tell you. But if you take a look at this, and this is where, the help of Logan in the junior high, we're at a 76, I think that is 0.8 for the district, because he has the kids in his group. There's about, what do you say, Logan, about 50 of them? 55. Yeah, that took algebra in 8th grade, and you take that combination, and then we were at 70, but I mean, that's not bad for algebra when you look across the state, and you look at, you look at the state level on that as well. That's pretty darn good. So, okay. Are there areas of improvement? Absolutely. I took all the SWBL schools and just wanted to see where we were. If I actually showed you all the schools, we were probably about 5th on the list out of all the teams. I mean, if you took all the schools, okay? Butler County average and the state average, and we're above right there. Definitely room for improvement. I just thought you would like to kind of see compared to like the area and even within our own conference. Next one, please. Okay, here's where it gets really good. Just taking a look at what we've done through our ECOT this year. We placed 61 students in Hornet Times for extra support going into the start of the year. 9 withdrew, 10 are still a concern, 4 only concerned for attendance. We have 38 students no longer at risk. I got to tell you this real quick. I was in the Atlanta airport coming home, and I get the spreadsheet on the number of kids that failed. Last year, I probably went through like 5 pages. I looked at the spreadsheet, and I'm like, there's got to be something wrong. So I called Jamie Wary. Jamie, this can't be all of them. She's like, no, I looked at it too. And then I'm like, something's got to be wrong here. We've had maybe a couple issues. So I start looking up kids I know, and I'm like, I'll be damned. They did it. They did it.
They did.
So, I mean, I'm telling you, it's impressive that this is a lot of hard work from a lot of staff members making connections with kids and getting that number down. And I think what's really helping us through the ECOT system is that we're being very strategic in the fact that we're making very, very important connections with these kids. The staff is in our grade level meetings, and I think we're seeing the reward of that. So next one, please. Okay. I just want you to see where we were in 23-24 to 24-25. This is quarter 1. If you start to look at the number of at-risk a year ago and how that's dropped off. Students with disabilities. That's even dropped off as well. We're making a dent for sure. We're heading in the right direction. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is where I wanted to show you, yes, we looked at chronic absenteeism, and you can say, oh, that's not too good. But take a look at our first 20 days last year and where we're at now for the first 20. And there was a significant drop-off even in the first quarter. We're getting the letters home. You know, you heard Logan talk about Mrs. Duddleson. She's playing a big part in this as well. I think the counselors are playing a big part in this as well. You've got a lot of people making phone calls, getting the kids at school, and we know how important that is. And we're seeing that right here. So that's some really good data to look at. Next one, please. Okay. So I was looking at that F list, right? This is how it dropped off from 12 down to 2. Pretty impressive. It's a heck of a way to start off this your first quarter in high school. Go to the next one. That's dropped off as well. And by the way, I'm not going to say it, but I know exactly what subject this is as well. And we're working on that already. So not only do I, you could look at math. You say you got algebra, you got geometry, and then you got the other math. Okay, I know exactly where those 11, probably 8 of them are from one subject area that I'm working on right now. Go on to the next one. Okay, so what are our next steps? We're going to continue working with our grade level team meetings. So we are meeting once a month, but that doesn't mean that we just kind of let it go for a month. I mean, I'm constantly making phone calls. The counselors are making phone calls. We've got teachers making phone calls to talk about where these kids are to keep them in Tier 1 supports, which is in the classroom. We're identifying the Tier 2 students and implementing supports for them We have a very few that are in tier 3, where there's a lot of people involved to help get those kids to where they need to be. As I'm doing my learning walks, I'm seeing that we have to improve instructional practices. Thanks to Nancy and working on our Kagan, our cooperative learning structures, and we're working on clear learning targets. We keep talking about getting into the classroom and making sure that the kids know what do they need to know or do when they come into that classroom and by the time they leave. So working on that, there's no doubt that, I mean, this is something that we keep hampering with the staff on, and I know we'll just keep working on this. We talk about PBIS initiatives. We talk about the culture piece. We talk about the incentives, and that comes back to incentivizing attendance and the behavior and the course performance. And so, I don't know, it was great to see that we've made some serious headway with the number of kids that were failing from the first quarter. And I know that is us being very strategic. We took kids that were coming into high school and put them in select Hornet times, pretty much gave them mentors and working with them. It's made a huge difference. And you know, I've got to thank the junior high for giving us that information so that we could roll into the year right away and start working with these kids. So I'm hoping to see the chronic absenteeism drop. You could see from what we've done first quarter, we're heading in that direction. Do I know we got to do a better job with the gap closing? And those are areas that we'll continue to work on too. But, you know, it's kind of like sometimes if you talk to Logan, when I coached football, sometimes when we won the football games, he often said, you guys seem more mad than it is when we lost, because we found things that we got to improve on. We're doing good, but we got to do a lot better. And we'll continue that fight for our kids. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, any questions?
I got one
Oh, boy.
question.
Hey, now listen, real quick. This doesn't eat into my time. He asked a question,
Yeah.
so I'm off the clock now. Yes. Hey, they're giving me grief. They say I talk too much.
We know, we've got a bet going. We know,
Okay.
yeah.
What do you got?
The question is, next year, all schools, the public education and all charter schools, ed choice, they get report cards next year, right?
Jody?
State report cards?
Some community schools already get report cards.
But then didn't DeWine make it next year to 100%?
I'm not sure.
I have not heard that, Tom. You had mentioned that before, but, you know, the private schools still will not get report cards.
It's not going to be public.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even though they're getting vouchers. state money.
Exactly.
Yeah, but they will not get report cards. And those kids don't take the OST.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that would be comparing apples to oranges. It would not, even if they did, you're not looking at data that would be even comparable.
yeah, but you got to have a level playing ground. I mean, you know, we are beating ourselves up to get these kids to school, and the rest of them are sitting out there and saying, no problem. And that's wrong.
Well, here's the thing. I know that, and I think I'm going to speak for our buildings as well. When it comes to attendance, I mean, we all know how important it is that we've got the kids here. And it is a battle. I mean, it is not just a Monroe issue. It is an issue across the area. And I think just continue having dialogue with parents. I mean, we literally had a parent that they took their kid out of school for 3 weeks. And we had a meeting with the mom. She swore that would never happen again, and she went out of the country. The kid went to a relative in a different state. Hopefully, they thought they were just going to continue doing their education remotely. We all know that's very difficult to do. So, but having that dialogue and having those discussions, I know it's happening at their other buildings. That's what we got to continue doing. And it's not just the administrators, it's everybody involved, and I think it's showing.
Well, you all doing a tremendous job,
Thank you.
all of you.
The last thing I
that.
just want, that I want to add about that, again, Jody started, this is just one measure that we look at, but I am proud of our kids, our staff. They continue to get better. If you looked at, I think Logan showed the arrow going up. If you look at all of our buildings in the district overall, we've improved every year over the last 3 years. since, they didn't take it in 2020, but since then, every year we've gotten, but our scores have gone up and continued to climb, so. And it's a moving target in a lot of the areas. Okay, we improved and here's our score, well, then they're gonna say, okay, then you need to improve by this percentage the next year just to meet the standard, and we continue to push through and improve in every area, so.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. 3.4, superintendent update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I'm going to share a little bit about the facilities committee that we had with Mr. Leeds and Mr. Grant, and Mr. Catanzaro was in attendance, as well as Mrs. Moore and Mr. Thomas, who's been helping us with a lot of the business operations end. We met last Tuesday, and we kind of decided that we were going to do it as an biannual thing. We're going to do it every fall and every spring, put it on the schedule in January, so they are scheduled, and we don't have to do the meeting notices for those. We talked about the 5-year facilities maintenance replacement plan and looked at the schedule, talking about how it's kind of a living document that as you look through things and budget things, sometimes things come up, and as you budget, you're going to continue to, okay, look at it. This maybe we can push back for another year so we can get this bigger item that came up. So it'll be a moving target for sure. Obviously, we talked about how the result of the November 5th bond issue will determine a lot with that list moving forward, especially when it comes to maintenance and replacement at the primary. Depending on the result, the maintenance and replacement on that building will look very different. So, but as far as the gym infill project that we're working on, we talked about that. RFPs were sent out, and we narrowed it down to 3 construction companies. They are Conger, HGC, and Skanska. Those 3 will be meeting with us Wednesday morning. And there's a team that will be sitting in on the interviews, obviously team from the district. Then we have 2 representatives from Fanning and Howey, and then 1 or 2 from MCS and Associates, and we will be interviewing those 3 construction companies, and then they'll make the actual formal proposals, and we'll make our decision. So I think it is a fantastic opportunity because this is a smaller project that's not very complex, but it will give us a really good idea of if they can do this on a smaller project, that gives us a kind of a preview of when we go into, hopefully we go into selecting architect and construction manager for a larger project. The last thing we talked about was with the wish list, again, depending on November 5th, the result of that, we will continue to maintain and replace as needed, but as far as going above and beyond some of the luxury items that we would do, that 5-year window where we're covering the cost, and so it is not passed on to the taxpayers, that is where most of our capital improvement, I'm not going to call it a slush fund, but above and beyond fund is going to go to until 2029. So, and end of first quarter came and gone. We've got the fall play coming up, not this weekend, but the following weekend. Football team playoffs this Friday, and fall sports have started practices. So. Winter sports have started practice. So, all right. Any questions?
No.
Okay.
Do we have a mechanism to get feedback on facilities from the community? Like, is there a good way if there's people that have things that they notice or want to share? I mean, I have folks that'll come to me every so often, but I mean, very seldomly. I just think that would be something interesting to consider, giving people an opportunity to voice things that they see firsthand. Because I know a lot of feedback that I have is always firsthand. So if I don't see it, or I don't hear about it, it's not on my radar. So I just want to make sure we have a good mechanism.
I don't know that we do have a mechanism for that right now, but
it's not like in the restroom, hey, call this number and have an issue. You'll be through the site managers of whatever event it is. So if you're experiencing something at a ball game, you see the ticket booth, or you see the site manager, is that, hey, there's an issue. There's not they've seen places that have QR codes or other things like that. We've also not done in our parent voice kind of components. We did a communication study with parents, and we haven't done a facility study with that as a focus.
Yeah, okay.
So that could be an area.
It could be something as we go through
Yeah.
a planning process, so hopefully over the next year that
I
could
think
be
a
a
lot
piece
of
of
that
it.
will come about when you see the architectural drawings.
Mhm.
So, you
Yeah.
know, is this included in there, or
Yeah.
can it be included, or
Yeah.
whatever?
I guess my thought is that I want to make sure, sometimes there's a lot of chatter outside that happens, and because conversations happen in different spaces, it never necessarily gets to us or to the leadership team, and parents then could get frustrated because something isn't being done about something that hasn't properly been even addressed, right? And I think that that's one of the big things. It's a communication breakdown at times from, what can happen on social media or in small group chats that never actually even makes it to somebody's attention that needs to know, and thus it looks like maybe something's, people are dragging their feet or whatever, and it's really just an awareness. So I know as a parent, I would probably use it if I go to a ball game and notice that, a sink isn't working. Well, what do I do? And those are things that are important to me as a parent and as a board member. I'm sure there's other parents that share in that. I thought about that as you're talking. I have no idea as a parent. I know I can call Robert up, and I know parents can too. But what's a good way for us to be able to address those items? Because we are, there's an aging school, and there are things that break down, and sometimes I'll bring something up, and it's not even you guys haven't been made aware of it because you haven't been through every nook and cranny recently. So just something to consider. I don't know if anybody would benefit from it, but I would as a parent.
Okay. Like Jess said, I don't think we have anything directly, but it's something definitely we can look into, so.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Buskirk. Moving along to Section 4, Treasurer's Consent Agenda. Mrs. Moore.
I recommend the board approve the treasurer consent agenda as presented.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Standard. I did provide an alternate monthly report this month. You often don't get to see all of our funds. So I gave that report instead of our regular monthly report, since our November forecast is being updated and will be presented at the next meeting. Do you have any questions about that particular monthly report? It is different. It has all funds. As a reminder, the 200 funds are the student-led student activity funds. The 300s are athletics, and all the 400s and 500s are grants. So you'll see some negative balance in the grants because we always spend it first and get reimbursed later. But outside of that, we are on track with our forecast. I do want to point out a couple of things that have happened kind of between September and October. One is our Rockies Express settlement did come in. I had that in the forecast in May, and then I took it out before approval, so it wasn't in there, and that's creating some interesting variances on the regular monthly reports. But we did actually get about $1.6 million from the result of that settlement. Most of that is a one-time increase, but about 39%, Rockies will be paying about 39% more than what they have been paying. So that's looking good for our future.
Good.
Another difference that happened technically in October is that we received our TIF money in October. And with that, there was one large parcel that had not been previously coded as a TIF at the county level. So they had to move it out of the normal real estate into the TIF grouping. And with that, we also received some back pay on that because TIF properties, they are set at a base amount for valuation when the TIF begins. So it actually reduced our property tax revenue, but it increased our TIF revenue by more than what it reduced the property tax. So we did get that, and that'll show up in our October reports, bless you. That'll show up in our October reports, and then next month we'll have better reports because the November forecast will be updated with all of that information. Outside of that, everything is on track.
Okay.
And we have some donations in there. We have a fund transfer, and the original forecast did have a $2 million transfer budgeted for pending capital projects, which at the time, we didn't know numbers, but we knew we were probably going to work on the gym infill project and possibly the road project. So I have a transfer for approval at $500,000 of the $2 million that was originally budgeted to get started on our gym infill project. I think that's all I have to report. Any questions?
On 4.3, is all the money where it's supposed to be?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Some pretty large donations. I want to obviously say thank you to all the organizations and folks that have donated this month or the last month or so.
That's it for me.
Yes. Do you have anything to say about the sunshade?
That's later in the.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Mrs. Moore. All right. Section 5, Superintendent Personnel Consent Agenda. Mr. Buskirk.
It is recommended to approve the superintendent personnel agenda,
May I get a motion?
So moved.
consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
You guys always like to make it hard on me, don't you? I'm going to give it to AJ. Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Sorry, Tom. Get you next time. All right. Mr. Buskirk.
Pretty standard. We have a resignation, hiring some substitutes. We have filling in a few of the remaining winter supplementals, and then a few salary increases.
Any questions?
Nope.
All right. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Section 6, Superintendent Other Business.
6.1 is recommended to approve the purchase of the installation of the sunshade system at the primary playground. And as you see, that amount was donated earlier by the primary PTO.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Any questions?
No, thank you again to the PTO.
Yes.
As a redhead, I would have loved to have had a sunshade on the playground. Just saying.
How does something, obviously this is a pretty large install, and Bill, how does something like this come up with the PTO? Is that something that gets discussed, I'm assuming, with the teachers and the principals, or what's typical for something like this?
We have monthly PTO meetings, and then I did send out a survey to our staff to see, I mean, they wanted shade out on that playground forever because it is hot. They have one longer recess instead of two small ones, because those get hot out there, and kids often get hot, maybe burn a little bit. So that, they wanted that for a long time, but we kind of put that on hold because we were doing our technology. So now that we have our clever touches installed and we have our own books, we're moving on to shade on the playground.
What kind of warranties on this, Jess?
Long enough to get us through, I think, the truck.
All right.
So I'd have to look back at it. We actually, they've been very, very helpful for us because we talked about the install is not to be, the whole post is not to be planted around the main plan. So if we, for some reason,
Need to
say
move it.
that it could be unbolted, at least the wall could be on wherever the primary plan is.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Something I was
Okay.
thinking about as well, so good. Cool.
Any other questions?
Nope.
I asked my questions.
You had that look in your eye, like you didn't know.
I always had that look in my eye.
All right, all right.
So,
Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 6.2.
It is recommended that the board approve or allow the superintendent to enter into a contract with the open court textbook adoption. And I'll explain what that means here.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
I am just asking for your approval for us to look at, we're still looking through the different options, which, between the length of the contract, and then they talked about splitting it into 2 contracts, whichever makes the most sense and is the most economical. And so we don't have all those quotes and details yet, but we didn't want to wait until the November to adopt it.
Okay.
Any questions?
So, makes sense.
All right. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 6.3.
I recommended that the board approve the Make It Plain agreement. This is a, well, go ahead, and then I'll explain to you what it is.
All right, may I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
This is a year-long professional development for our entire administrative team. We had our first session on October 14th, and it was, I thought it was really strong professional development. Sometimes we do not, you look into things, but this has been really good for our team, so.
It's good to hear.
Mhm.
Any questions?
No?
All right, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 6.4.
And it's recommended the board approve the calendar for the 25-26 school year.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Any questions?
This is, it's a group of staff that get together and go through and look at it and come up with the different options. It's really pretty close to the calendar that it mirrors this year. So, 2 weeks at Christmas, week and a day for spring break. Those are always the important things for families.
And I saw no school on Halloween next year, too. It's a PD day.
Yeah.
Ah.
I know.
Oh, yeah, it'll be a Friday, won't it?
Uh-huh.
It's
Yep.
pretty exciting for the kids.
Got really amped up on candy all day. Perfect.
Hazel's like, well, that's no fair. I was like, dude, you'll be in college. Get out of here. You'll be fine. All right, any other questions?
Nope.
All right, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Buskirk. All right, section 7, comments from the board. Seeing none, we'll move along to.
I was thinking that exact same thing.
Nice.
I tried. All right, Mr. Leeds.
Before I give any comments, I hate to ask the question, where are we on the driveway?
We actually, literally, Jesse, I was coming over here to, for the board meeting, and Jesse was coming in the parking lot. We just received the traffic study from the city back with its comments, but it's, 180 pages, so we're going to set up a meeting with managers here in the next week or so to go through everything to see where we are.
180 pages?
I
That's,
think the study's in the 90 pages. There's 6 pages of comments between the entities. And
yeah,
each line has, hey, we did this, or this assumption, so there's still a lot to unpack.
yeah.
Or a driveway.
Just enough to confuse everyone.
Putting like a neighborhood?
That's
90
excessive.
pages for a
Mr.
study.
Carpenter, you know how those engineers are.
They're
They can't do
ridiculous.
anything simple.
Let me know if you need
Are like
Dot and
80
I without
pages
having a
pictures of the
10
layout?
page.
Probably, so. But we are, we're going to get a meeting set here in the next week or so to go through it with them and see where we are,
Okay.
so we can hopefully start moving forward with that.
That would be fantastic.
Yes.
Well, as far as the comments go, kudos to the staff for what they're doing on these state report cards. You guys are doing a fantastic job, and we appreciate every bit of it. Congratulations to everybody that was the students and the staff that received recognition this past week for the Student of the Month and the staff member. And then the only other thing I got is vote, and let's get this thing taken care of.
All right, well, I'm done. Tom had just hit on all my points.
Seeing none, we'll move along to section 8.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mr. Fulham?
Yeah, quick echo, staff doing a great job. I know for me professionally, the hardest thing is to go from good to great. and great to perfect, which is what you guys in a lot of the case are really trying to do, moving that needle beyond 100% in a lot of cases, and just know that even though that pesky star hasn't changed, have a lot of, take a lot of pride in what you guys are accomplishing. And I love this. This is like my favorite meeting every year, is to really see how you guys are thinking as principals, and how passionate you are about the areas, and how personal you take areas of opportunity, because it shows that everything we say about having a great staff is not just us talking. It really is what we see and what we feel. And this is the meeting that I hope people will take a minute to watch and see that, because I know that is part of the culture. So thank you guys. Getting to my high fives around the hive. All right, high fives to the Monroe High School National Honor Society members and newest inductees. Membership in NHS is a significant achievement, recognizing your exemplary character, leadership, service, and scholarship. Thank you for representing yourselves and our district with such distinction. To our bus drivers, high five, and all of our transportation and support staff for safely transporting our students to and from school each day, as well as countless extracurricular activities. I appreciate your commitment to their well-being and your professionalism on the road. You play a vital role in our children's education, and I'm grateful for you and your service to the community. High five to our athletic and band booster organizations who organize and support so much for our students throughout the year. Thank you for being such incredible champions for our young athletes and musicians. We are truly fortunate to have you. And that is all.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham.
You're welcome.
Mr. Grant.
Congrats to the principals, staff, Jody, Nancy, and everybody for the report card information is greatly appreciated. But more importantly, for already having a game plan for next year to improve upon those. The passion from each of you speaking tonight is very evident. So, and I've said it many times and outside of the school, having conversations with other people in other schools, but hands down, I would put our administration staff and everyone involved against anybody in the state of Ohio, hands down. So kudos to all of you. Great job. Fantastic. I love it. I also want to give a shout out to Eric and the athletic department. We hosted a bunch of events here over the weekend. The boosters were also involved in working the concession stand, but to be able to have outside schools come to our facilities, and I think we do a bang-up job of hosting events. So congratulations to Eric. Also, as Tom mentioned, we have a pretty important election coming up next week, so everyone, get out and vote.
All right, thank you, Mr. Grant. Mrs. Hagedorn.
I much preferred sitting in AJ's spot where I could go before everybody else.
I know.
So I'd like to, I could say ditto to everything that everybody has said here. A couple of things that I wanted to mention was I look forward to the fall play, and then there were none in, I think, in 2 weekends, November 7th through 10th. So I'm not sure when tickets go on sale, but check that out. The school plays are always really fun to see all the kids do their thing, and they do such a great job. It's fabulous.
I think they're already on.
Are they on sale now? So check that out. Also, this Friday is a playoff game, so I like to say for football cheer and the marching band to play hard, do your best, and most importantly, have fun. Because if you do all of that, then it's a success no matter how it turns out. I'd like to also thank all of the principals and Jody Long for their presentations today. Like what AJ had said, this is one of my most favorite meetings, to see where we are, to look at all the different ratings that we have and all the data that's put out there to compare where we were and where we're going and what the goals are. I think it's just great to see where Monroe is and to see that the future is bright for us in the community and for our students. That it's a fabulous job. It's like, I really like that, to see all those presentations and everything. I think it's great to get that information out to the parents, and I really do hope that parents watch and learn. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. With that, so a couple things. So I was here right at 6 o'clock because I was at the high school cross-country banquet. And big shout out to Coach Wilcox. She has done such a great job of growing that program. So Hazel's been on the cross-country team since 7th grade. And that program was so small when she joined that program. And I think tonight there was like, I don't know, there was easily 10 seniors, probably more than 10 seniors on that cross-country
That
team.
was the most amount of seniors I've ever announced on senior night.
It's incredible watching that.
On Friday night.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So I hope that the program continues to grow, because when you go to some of these cross-country races where like Mason's at it, you're like, dude, come on. Like, this is ridiculous. They have like 85 kids on like their varsity team. It's so silly. But it's good to see kids, like there's soccer players that are running cross-country, and you know, just seeing these kids that are just, they want to do something that, hey, there's this odd cross-country thing. So they go do that and they get hooked on it. It's great. It's fun to go watch. If you've never been to a cross-country meet, you should go to one. It's really fun. It's like a little festival. Everybody has little tents going on.
Yeah,
Everybody's
they
cheering
do.
everybody on. And what's great is the kid who comes in very last gets more
Yep.
accolades, more cheers than the kid who came in like running a 3.5 minute mile race. It's really cool, very supportive community. It's really, really fun to go watch. The play, so it's in 2 weeks. I know, it's like the fourth person who said it. It is a black box thing, so there's limited seats. So if you want to go see it, you might want to check tonight, because I'm not sure if there's any more tickets left. But I cannot verify. I already have my tickets. I'm really excited to go. I heard they have like the best costume person that you can get. Her last name is Carpenter, so I'm a little biased. But yeah, it's going to be really great. Lastly, senior night. Thank you to everybody that was involved. It was really cool. Photos look great. Thank you for calling out my name appropriately. I thought I was for sure going to get something weird said, but
The thought was going through my
I
mind.
had a feeling. But again, it was really great. It was cool being on the other side of it. It was a little bit different. Not sure how I feel about it yet still, but just thank you to everybody who helped put that on.
The first one's the hardest.
Oh, dude. No, the last one's going to be like,
I see. I don't-
but
That's how you can get your tickets.
Yeah, there's
oh,
on the screen, there's a barcode, CQR code to buy your ticket, so
Okay.
it's good. Thank you. Yeah.
thanks, Cinda. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And with that, I will take. Oh, by the way, FC Cincinnati is currently tied 0-0 in the game, so not that I've been trying to follow along or anything. Anyway, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 7:37 p.m.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Sorry, I missed. Who was the
Mr.
motion?
Grant motioned.
Okay.
Mr. Fulham was the second.
Mr. Grant,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Good night, everybody.
Thank you for my sign, Jenna. My big one out there. I think I'm gonna move it a little bit closer to the 63.